An official with the International Organization for Migration says the lives of hundreds of migrants from the Middle East and Asia living in a camp in the forests of Bosnia are at risk as the bitter Balkan winter approaches. Aid agencies are urging authorities to the camp to find better accommodation for the migrants as the weather starts to turn.
The lives of these migrants from the Middle East and Asia are at risk. That's the serious warning from the International Organization for Migration. As temperatures drop, the hundreds living here in this forest camp in Bosnia are in danger as the bitter Balkan winter approaches. Aid agencies are urging the authorities to close this camp and find better accommodation for the migrants as the weather starts to turn.
If people stay there for the winter, people will die. And they're not going to die in 5 months' time, they will die in a couple of days or a few weeks' time because the temperatures are going down very rapidly.
The site lacks running water and electricity, and the nearby woods are littered with landmines left over from the Yugoslav wars of the 1990s. With temperatures close to zero, police officers have had to restrain migrants quarrelling over the small amounts of food provided by the local Red Cross.
The situation is very bad. You see that we have a lot of problem, a tents problem. We are sleeping from 2 days. This poor tent. There is no bed. We are sleeping in the stones. But the other necessary things are not available here, like bathrooms. We just take one bathroom in 6 days.
Bosnia has faced an upsurge in migrant numbers since Croatia, Hungary and Slovenia closed their borders against undocumented immigration. More than 40,000 migrants have entered Bosnia since 2018. Nearly 1/5 are children. Bosnian authorities have not been able to decide on where to house the migrants that are stuck in their country. The tents aren't enough to keep these men warm this winter, let alone the flip-flops many of them arrived wearing.
Well, here at home, hundreds of migrants have been camping out at the offices of the United Nations Refugee Agency in Cape Town and Pretoria. They've asked to be relocated to other countries after recent acts of violence against foreign nationals in the country. And for the latest on this issue, I'm joined in studio by 2 refugee leaders, Pastor Alec Mongo and Aline Bukuru, and Dr. Fusmuzi Sibanda from the African Diaspora Forum. Lady and gentlemen, a very good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you.
All right, Alex, I'm going to start with you. If you could just give us a brief history of how some of the migrants found themselves camping at the UN offices.
Oh, thank you very much. The story is the refugees in South Africa. They are suffering with a xenophobic attack from 11 years going to 12 years now. And this xenophobic attack, we refugees are the one that lost many loved ones. Our shop have been looted. Our children, they don't have peace when they go to school. And ourselves, when we go to home affairs, we don't have peace. Xenophobic attack is everywhere by the life of refugees. That we come to realize as refugees we are not protected in South Africa. That's why we as refugees we went to protest. It's not only protesting, it's a sit-in or sit-down by UNHCR office here in Pretoria and Cape Town. Is a result of xenophobic attack.
Okay, so Aline, how long are you planning to camp outside the offices of the UN? I mean, I would imagine with the current weather patterns, you don't have access to sanitation and you are exposed to these weather conditions. I mean, how are you coping?
Yeah, it's not so easy, but we, as refugees, they say that for them to get their rights, maybe to go there to camp by the United Nations Commission for Refugees, it's where they are going to get solution, because in the community they get abused, attacked, killed, and it seems like there's no help when they run to the police and there's no help. So that is why they came together. They decided to go to sit there and ask the UNHCR to relocate them out of South Africa.
So how long are you planning to camp for?
But we are there until when we get solution, until when the UNHCR answer on our demand.
Dr. Sibanda, this can't be right. I mean, they are camping there for for an indefinite period. And I mean, looking at the fact that some of the children who are camped there are exposed to these terrible weather conditions and lack of sanitation, as it were.
Well, thank you very much. It is unacceptable. I mean, we talk about, humanitarian law, and that the United Nations, for example, High Commission for Refugees is responsible for refugees and asylum seekers. And as a result, what we are saying is basically that, it should have already come in. I mean, we've got a few toilets, for example, I think now that were donated by the Nigerian Doctors Association. But the United Nations, UNHCR practically refused, to heed to that, to realize that, look, there is a humanitarian crisis, to concern themselves about the impending outbreak of disease that was going to happen, because the place was actually becoming inhabitable, because there are children there and they cannot even go to the toilets to walk all the way down to the mall. So yes, I mean, that is very much unacceptable, and we believe that the United Nations High Commission for Refugees needs to come to the party and make sure that an urgent solution is basically found to help resolve this.
What is that solution that's been sought?
Well, look, we understand. I mean, we have had, when we had engagements, we've had a meeting with the UNHCR and the South African Human Rights Commission and, Department of Home Affairs. And in terms of basically resettlement or evacuation, because that is basically the term that was used, that, this is a need, there is a need for evacuation because this is a crisis. People are running away, they're fearing for their lives. So it can't be said to be just a resettlement. It has to be, referred to as an evacuation. Now, the UNHCR said, look, we don't have a country, we cannot send you anywhere. But we are saying that as much as that could have been the case, I think that they could have approached it in a better way to actually try and engage, with the people that are striking, sit down with them, rather than, what we have had, because it looks like the UNHCR has been more defensive, rather than try to deal with the situation. I mean, at one stage when we had a meeting, the leaders were actually called into the meeting and they refused to drink water because for the past 3 weeks that they've been there, they've not been offered water. And now to come and offer them water when they're called into a meeting, that was hypocritical. So, I mean, that is where the problem is, to say UNHCR wants to to negotiate, to find how best we can deal with the situation, but you're not doing that on a daily basis. During the course of the day and any other day, you show animosity towards the very same people that are dependent on you. They are completely under the purview of the UNHCR, to such an extent that the UNHCR should be the one that is leading in these negotiations. We want government, for example, to come down and say there's an issue of xenophobic attacks, and it's a major concern because property has been lost, lives have been lost. How do we deal with this situation? We are actually saying, we've been trying to negotiate also with the refugees and asylum, because they fall under our purview. They are also migrants, to say, guys, we need to find a solution. But that solution, we understand if they're saying, but what is the solution? Because UNHCR has not even offered to say, government, let's talk about the policing issue. Let's talk about the law, the prosecution of people that kill, our migrants. So those are the kind of issues that we say, let's have them come up on the top of the agenda, so that we can say, if we talk to them, say, guys, you need to stay, you need to realize that government is doing everything that is possible, but there must be a solution. And we're not seeing that.
So as the negotiations are in progress, is there perhaps a plan in place? Because I understand that the UNHCR had offered temporary accommodation for some of these migrants while the negotiations are in progress, but then it was rejected.
Well, look, we actually, Commissioner Makwetla, and myself, basically are the ones that were speaking to it. Commissioner Makwetla is supposed to be leading, that team, that task team. But now, to offer that, for example, that a temporary solution that it could be given without basically showing the consent, because it looked to the refugees, the people that it looked like trying to get rid of them. You see, when you come to people, you say, let's just take you and put you a camp, and these people have been put in a camp in 2008 and they ended up being attacked. In 2015 they were put again in camps where they ended up again left stranded. So now you want to say, when they're here again, want to take you and go and put you in a camp again, but you have not shown that you are interested in resolving their problems. I mean, some of the utterances that we got from the UNHCR were quite appalling. So as we are going forward, we've actually organized that, maybe we should again sit down and bring the other stakeholders. Commissioner Makwetla and the CEO of the South African Human Rights are going to be trying to lead that. But we want to see practical, involvement, from the stakeholders, to say, we understand what are the issues in question, and this is how we're going to deal with these issues. Because at the end of the day, it's also difficult for us. We have to talk. These people fall within our purview, to discuss with them and say, guys, we need you guys to move and real settle, and be here. When at the end of the day, we're not able to provide to their basic needs. They need water. They need sanitation. You need to show that, okay, they've got accommodation, but all of us are going to live here. We're going to our houses and they're going to sleep outside, and nobody seems to care. So that's where the problem is. It's difficult to go and negotiate when you don't tender, to the person's basic needs. You understand? So this week, I think, there's a ministerial meeting. I had Commissioner Makwetla saying around about the 18th. But there's also a court case that is basically going. And we understand that, Home Affairs and the police are basically, opposing. But they're not opposing on the merits. They're actually trying to find, negotiations. But because the application basically says the people should not sleep, outside the UNHCR. But the truth of the matter is the UNHCR is the one responsible. So if they don't want the people to sleep on the pavement, maybe they should let them go inside the UNHCR so that the UNHCR must then stand up and resolve these issues. So what we should be doing or looking at is that this court case in Pretoria, for example, it should have made the UNHCR a respondent. But interestingly, UNHCR has been left out. So for me, it might look a bit, mischievous that, UNHCR is not taking its job seriously. We've also received complaints in Botswana already that we've got refugees and asylum seekers in Botswana that already, the same office in Pretoria is dealing with, and now these people are now being said they need to be repatriated because Botswana is not a refugee country and it cannot keep them indefinitely, so they need a permanent solution. And just about 9 people, I think, over 5-10 years have been recycled, but nothing else. And they are now being forced to say we're repatriating you because they come from Zimbabwe, and it's said that Zimbabwe is at peace, everything is fine. So, and again, it all boils down to the office in Pretoria, because that is the regional office, within the Southern Africa. So we really need a serious commitment from the UNHCR.
Yeah, and I would love us to talk about, the complexities of mass repatriation in a moment. But Alex, what I need to get from you is, which other countries have you perhaps wanted the UNHCR to repatriate you to?
Thank you very much for the question. Actually, as refugees, we don't have a choice, because back in our countries, we've been mistreated, we've been persecuted. We ran from the war and we came to South Africa thinking that South Africa want to be our home. By surprise, South Africa tend to become our hell, which we are dying with xenophobic attack. And if you ask me which country that we need to be repatriated or resettled, we know that UNHCR doesn't have a country, but they have a right, and they are very well in a good position to negotiate, because the world is too big. They can negotiate anywhere in the country where we can be resettled, because we need our children to have a better future as well. We want to be in the country that there's no xenophobic attack, because since 11 years and going to 12 years, xenophobic attack has been taking place in South Africa, and the losers and the victims, the vulnerable, are the refugees. And if we say the country, we need a country that we can feel at least comfortable. At least we can have, our children can have a future. Our children can have at least better future, even ourselves. And I see this xenophobic attack which is going on is going to change a form to not be xenophobic attack, but it's going to change a form to become genocide. They will enter house by house, because they know refugees, they don't have support from government, they don't have support from UNHCR, they don't have support from police. They know, these people, they know. This xenophobic attack, it will change to become genocide. This is what we are fearing, and this is what we're scared of, because we are the victims and we don't have anybody. We are like the voiceless people. We've been treated like dogs at Home Affairs. We have been treated as dogs by the police. Nobody take our matter serious. It seems like life of refugee doesn't matter in South Africa, and this is something that's going on and on and on. It changed a way to become routine to South Africans to kill xenophobic attack, to kill refugees. When they have any problem, when they have any quarrel, when the government, or let's say when the authorities, they are promising the people that they are going to do something, when they fail to their promises, they change the matter to say these are the people that are taking your job. For example, I can say, look first what's happened in Cape Town. How can you go and attack somebody who doesn't have a weapon? You know, the refugees that they were there in Cape Town, they're just going in and attack them. They don't have a weapon, they don't have anything. They were very quiet people. They're just seeking for their rights, as we are thinking for our right here in Pretoria, the same as our brother and sister in Cape Town. But look how the police, they're going to attack those people. That means xenophobic attack is even in the police. I can say, according to my point of view, South Africans, not all of them, but majority of South Africans, they are xenophobic minded, because they don't feel to help refugees. Look, even here in South Africa, let's say UNHCR here in South Africa, why they are delaying to help refugees, why they are delaying to take the matter serious for refugees. They are trying to say, to show people like, no, we don't know about the xenophobic attack, but everybody knows that the xenophobic attack is in South Africa and the refugees are the losers. So we need people and the international community to stand for this matter, because the losers are the refugees. We don't have country that we are targeting, but we need to be somewhere that we can have safety and at least safety places as well. Thank you.
Aline, Alex just correctly highlighted some of the challenges that are faced by migrants and refugees alike on a day-to-day basis, and I suppose it's an international problem. This is a perennial problem that is experienced literally everywhere. So have you perhaps anticipated some of these kind of challenges that you're facing in South Africa, that you probably might face to any other country that you may be repatriated to?
Yeah, before we talk for other country, we need to think where we are first. Because if we try to solve where we are not in, we'll keep failing. So first of all, we'd like to solve the issue which is in South Africa. We don't know any country because we've never been in the country. From home to South Africa, we thought South Africa is going to be a better home, but unfortunately it is not. So let's first think of South Africa. Let us stop denying our responsibilities. So we need the government to allow the UNHCR to work to protect refugees, to reset refugees, because the UNHCR, they always point government finger and saying that
resettle the refugees to where? I mean, whose responsibility should it be of resettling the refugees? I mean, and identifying some of the countries.
That is a UNHCR mandate.
Okay.
Yes, there is a mandate. They know where how to negotiate, and they know the country. But refugees, they don't know where, and refugees, they're not there to choose, but they know that. Refugees knows that is a UNHCR work mandate to do so.
Okay. Dr. Sabanda, on the 21st of October, there was a meeting between the Department of Home Affairs and the Lawyers for Human Rights, and as well as the South African Human Rights Commission, and there was a proposal to the effect that a task team should be established, to build social cohesion in the country, and the Department of Home Affairs, checking on the status of each and every family and issue the relevant documentation. But these kinds of proposals have been rejected, and all the other migrants and protesters instead opted for resettlement. But then there are other complexities around the issue of resettlement, chief of which is the resettlement country's willingness to take in more refugees. Have you perhaps thought about this?
Well, look, I think that proposal, I would not say that it was outrightly, maybe rejected, because the feeling again, I was actually part of that meeting. The feeling again, in fact, even in the meeting, we were driving, the agenda to say, guys, we need to talk and have a proper dialogue. And I think that the problem is, when we sit down, to come to say, let's have a dialogue, and people come with positions already, that they want to come and defend. They don't come to a negotiating table with an open mind. That is where the problem is, because our feeling is that, number one, UNHCR should have been leading, the process to basically say, we as an international body that deals, with, refugees and asylum seekers, we are the ones that are going to take, these issues to the government to say, government, this is on this is your responsibility here. This is where you have failed these people. How do we resolve this? And probably get an undertaking from government to say this is the situation. But that meeting had to be called by the South African Human Rights after we contacted them, so to convene that particular meeting. Now, going forward, we also think that even to date, we still believe that, a proper dialogue, a genuine dialogue, and a genuine desire to resolve, the political will to resolve some of these problems, like, for example, prosecuting people that, kill, migrants. We have a picture, for example, a video, a small video footage, in GP's town of somebody murdering someone in broad daylight, gouging out their eyes. Everybody's got a picture of that person. If we put that picture out there and say this person, it won't take 2 days before that person is identified. But nothing of that sort has happened. So when we sit here and I say, to these guys, you are like, okay, you are facing the same problems with all migrants. But at the end of the day, I also still want an answer. I need government to commit to say, you know what, if somebody kills, a migrant through these xenophobic attacks, we've got the National Action Plan that is supposed to deal with, the hate speeches and xenophobia. We need to see the teeth in these laws so that people that attack or kill a migrant of any sort is also treated like any other person who kills a South African or any other person. Once that is done, then we can all say we are sailing in the same boat. But right now there is that exclusivity that says if a migrant, a refugee, asylum is attacked, then that person does not what? We don't see the same level of seriousness in terms of pursuing those particular, criminal activities. That is where the big problem is. If we can give effect, to the ability to deal with those prosecutions, I think that, the colleagues sitting here would be in a position to speak to them and say, guys, wait a minute. The government, for example, says all of a sudden, if somebody is seen looting or, attacking, a migrant shop, we're going to give them minimum 5 or 10 years. That becomes prohibitive. That says anybody who thinks about doing it knows that, there's going to be consequences. Then we're going to say we're moving into the right direction. We have seen, laws enacted for, for example, gender-based violence to say, okay, or drunken driving. We see blitz, being held by the police because we're trying to curb a particular crime. We need to see law being put in place to deal with the attack on migrants or refugees and asylum seekers as a means of trying to encourage and ensure the safety of the migrants.
No doubt this situation has reached crisis point or crisis level, as it were. Yes. And understandably so, because if migrants don't feel safe in South Africa and they want to be repatriated elsewhere, I mean, we understand where they're coming from. But then obviously this has led to the calls for mass repatriation, which some officials have said is virtually impossible because these can be done on a case-by-case basis. And looking at the fact that there is about 26 million asylum seekers and refugees worldwide, and that number keeps on increasing every year.
Look, I think that is exactly the point. The issue is, I also know, I was actually looking at, the issue of, Libya, the people that need to be repatriated that are held in detention camps. And we are also saying, in terms of the law, South Africa has got some of the best laws. It is the implementation that is a concern. When you look at refugee laws, it's got the best laws, beautiful, courts. We've been to court. I was in court on Friday. We got people that, asylum seekers, getting released. But you've got to fight, even when the law is very clear. It states these things clearly because there is an unwillingness on the people that are supposed to implement the law to implement the law. So even as we're talking right now, there is a crisis. There is possibly, that problem that says it might not be possible to maybe repatriate, or evacuate, the people that are actually protesting now. But what we are saying is, let us see the alternative now to show that there is a desire to bring in a sustainable alternative which will ensure that there is confidence even on the people that are actually complaining to say, yes, definitely, we feel that our safety is going to be ensured. Because from what we read and from what we see, it looks like it is impossible. It looks like it is difficult to have these, mass repatriations. Of course, we do hear that, there are allegations that, the UNHCR is also doing it corruptly. Some other people, have to pay money. There's always allegations that will come here and there. But we don't know. If that is true, then that also means that that's why there is a problem. But what we are saying is, we understand that, the UNHCR says it cannot do it, because there are no countries that can, do that. We can't have it done en masse. And number two, you've got to find a willing country. Normally people have got to go to countries on their own and do this. We understand that. But we're saying, let's have a solution before we have got outbreak of disease, before we are seen as people that don't care, with our own people. These are black people. This is mainly with us Africans, we are failing to find solutions in our own backyard, about issues that really involve us. If we can put our hearts into these issues and say, we've got children sleeping outside there, we've got children, being pulled apart from their mothers, like what we saw in Pretoria, is that the kind of, picture that we want the whole world to know Africa for? I don't think so. If we can sit down and be sober, I don't believe that we can take 3 weeks without finding a solution to this problem. If the solution for repatriation is not a solution, I believe we can find an alternative solution if the stakeholders that are involved here come committedly to say, we are going to find the solution. I think the solution is within us. We need these guys to be very serious about it. And if UNHCR becomes serious, the human rights, the government, we sit down, I believe we have a solution. Even if
when you speak of an alternative solution, what are we looking at? Because now the migrants need only one thing to be, to be taken out of South Africa to an alternative country. So when you talk of an alternative solution, what is it that you're looking at?
I don't think that it's cast in stone in my view. I think that it's a position that is, led and guided by what has happened. So I think that, that is likely. I think there is a possibility that it can be changed. I mean, I think, when Aline is saying, look, we need to deal with South Africa, for example, first, when she says we need to deal with South Africa, that statement on its own, tells you that if we can deal with the problems that we had, there should be a possibility that, things could be resolved. So I think that as much as that is their position, but if they are assured, that there is going to be steps and that their lives are going to be safe, I think this can definitely be, I don't want to speak for them, but I really believe, because remember, when I'm speaking here, I'm speaking of forced migration and, you know, even voluntary migration. You know, the moving of forced migration still leaves us with the problem of what? Of the voluntary migration, the other people that are not refugees and asylum seekers. And they will still face the same problem. So for us, it is basically to say, let us find an umbrella solution. And I don't think that it should be our solution that maybe we should see that as an ultimate solution to have people evacuated. Let's solve the main crisis, what has brought us here.
We don't have much time, unfortunately. Aline, please be as brief as you possibly can. Assuming that South African government officials are watching this program right now, what would you like to say to them?
I would like to ask the South African government to please work hands to hands with UNHCR and to make ease for refugees to be relocated out of South Africa.
Okay. Now, Alex, what would your ideal solution be?
Oh, the ideal solution must be just to be relocated from South Africa. And I would like to have this occasion and opportunity to ask, why does South African government hold refugees while they're the ones that incite this xenophobic attack to refugees? Why they still hold refugees to not move and go out from South Africa? Why I say so? Because all the time UNHCR is saying that they are going to engage with government to know how they can have a solution and protection. So I'm asking, why does government still holding refugees? They should let us go. They have to allow UNHCR to work so we may be relocated from another country, because here our life is at stake. And something else that I need to remember just for 20 seconds, we can never change the mind of xenophobic people just during the night, like overnight. This will take long to educate people, because it has been long people are doing xenophobic attack for quite 11 and going to 12 years. So we can never educate people overnight to say, okay, you have to stay like this with refugees or stay like this with foreigners. Is impossible, because the mind is already corrupted and is xenophobic. Right. So we need to leave South Africa for good.
Alex, Aline and Dr. Sibanda, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining.